the advantage of having a patented product to sell. In the nutrition space and the feed additive space, you can get into a lot of Me Too products. Everybody has a mycotoxin binder, and there's not a whole lot of separation. But having a patented product really kind of sets us apart.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Wisenetix Podcast episode. Very happy to have here with me today Justin Whitley. Justin is the CEO at Drylet, and he's going to be sharing a little bit of his experiences here with us today. Welcome, Justin.
Yeah, thanks. Glad to be here.
Awesome. Justin, for us to start, share a little bit more about yourself so the audience can get to know you better.
Yeah, so grew up in Eastern North Carolina. Went to North Carolina State, got a bachelor's and master's degree in animal science there. Master's focused on reproductive physiology, which I have yet to have as part of my job. But good experience nonetheless. And I've career-wise started out on a sow farm, which was a good experience. Knew I wasn't something I wanted to do forever. And then kind of got into work for extension for a few years and then got into sales. And that's kind of where my career in the swine industry took off. So mostly in swine nutrition sales up until taking this position with Drylet as an account manager back in 2021, and then taking over as CEO in 2020, late 2022.
Justin, you mentioned you started your career with you had your bachelor's first, then you got into sales in the nutrition side of things in the swine industry. Now, as a CEO, do you think your parents would be able to be accurate to describe what you do today? How would they describe what you do today?
Yeah, I mean, I think to some extent they have a pretty good idea of what I do. My dad would probably say, I don't know, he does something with pig manure, which is part of part of the job, but it's certainly not all of it. Yeah, no, I think my mom would probably give a similar answer. So they have a general idea, but probably not to the extent of the day to day of what I do.
Perfect. Well, most of the times I think they're not very accurate. So let's explore this a little bit more. Like, how did your background, first in animal science, then your account executive and sales roles within the livestock industry, how they shape your approach to where you are now as a leader, as the CEO of Drylet?
Yeah, I mean, I've had several, probably more job changes than I would have ever planned for. Um, but I think each one of them and at every stop I've had along the way, all the way back to all the college classes that I took and the jobs that I had as a student, prepared me for what I'm doing now. And I think in large part, being able to be quickly reactive and being able to be adaptive to new situations. Working for what is a small company, I would consider us still in a startup phase, even though the company itself is roughly 10 years old. Um, you have to be adaptive. You have to be willing to step outside of your comfort zone. And I think all those stops along the way in my career and education to this point have certainly prepared me for that.
Awesome. Yeah. My background, I also had like a good number of changes and switches during my career, working with design, working with education, communication, now sales. And one thing that I love about these different experiences, well, they didn't help me to be like the best specialist in something,
Sure.
but they did give me the knowledge and the experience to learn to be more flexible, adaptive, if that's the word. Be able to adjust to different situations, be in different places, deal with different cultures and different people. So that's a similar path to, well, some sort of way, a similar path to a few things that I've done. But I have to say I wouldn't change it.
Yeah, no doubt.
I really like the opportunity of being able to have these different perspectives, and I'm sure they add a lot to my experience today. And Justin, so you mentioned Drylet is quite a small company. You guys are uh, almost about 10 years in the market. How was this transition for you? Because it was the first time you were the CEO of a company, which is something very important, right? Uh, Regardless of the size of the company, it's a big responsibility. So, what were the main challenges you faced during this transition when you took over as a CEO, and how did you overcome them?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, the biggest challenge and biggest adaptation, if we want to keep that as a theme, was just learning the administrative side of things. All the QuickBooks management that I'm doing now with help. I'm not doing that all on my own, but managing the finances, doing. I've always done sales budgets, but it's always been for my specific product, my territory, not for the whole company, right? So, looking at all the potential expenditures and making hiring and firing decisions, all those administrative duties were well outside of my previous experience. So, but then again, I mean, I have, I think at each one of those career stops along the way, you can learn what you like and what you don't like and how a business is run, and how managers you may have had in the past handle certain things, and what type of manager you want to be. And I don't know if it's the right approach, but I'm not a micromanager. I like to hire people to do a job and trust them to do that job, and we can make corrective actions when we need to. But um, yeah, that's my general approach. Is hey, let's hire the right people that are smarter than me in certain areas, and let them be good in those areas. So that's really one thing that I've tried to maintain throughout this couple years experience so far.
Yeah, you need to be able to, you know, trust other people to do the things. Other, you cannot be over control everyone and want to, put your finger on everything. Otherwise, you're gonna go crazy. It's too much for one person.
I've probably gotten a little better at delegation too. That was one thing that I probably struggled with in the past. I wanted to have my control, if you want it done right, do it yourself kind of mentality. But yeah, I've had to, because again, I don't want to be that micromanager because I've been in those situations, and I've gotten a lot better at delegation and letting other folks take over some projects too.
It's an important skill. It's an important skill, and not easy to learn. I was always a guy who, yeah, who wanted to do things on my own way. Here at Wisenetix, I've been learning a lot to, collaborate more. Well, not I was always able to collaborate, but I was collaborating in a certain level where at the end I wanted, oh, yeah, let's collaborate, but let's go on my route. Let's collaborate on my route. Yeah, it's something I've been learning as well, and essential for leading teams, leading, especially leading a company. And let's talk a little bit more about Drylet. You talk a little bit about manure management, but you guys are also expanding to other areas such as natural gas. Can you share a little bit more what you're doing, what are your these new areas you're exploring, and how do you do to prioritize and manage these diverse verticals?
Yeah. So the quick elevator pitch on Drylet, we're a bioremediation company, so we have a patent around the delivery method of microbes that gives us an outsized benefit compared to the rest of the market. So the four verticals that we're active in right now would be livestock, so manure treatment, um, municipal waste, so any municipal waste treatment facilities, wastewater treatment plants, um, renewable natural gas that you mentioned, and then what we consider industrial solids, so rendering facilities, slaughterhouses, processing facilities, that kind of thing. So yeah, we are. I was primarily hired with my livestock background for the livestock vertical, and so part of that being adaptive is learning application to the other industries and learning about those industries and expanding my Rolodex, if you will, and trying to build relationships in those other spaces. And so kind of end up being a jack of all trades, master of none to some extent. But yeah, I mean, it's challenging for sure, but it's also rewarding. I mean, I have, I don't want to speak out of turn here, but I don't think in my past sales experiences I've had the privilege or the advantage of having a patented product to sell. In the nutrition space and the feed additive space, you can get into a lot of Me Too products. Everybody has a mycotoxin binder, and there's not a whole lot of separation. But having a patented product really kind of sets us apart, and really, not only does it have a patent, but it works really well too. So those two things have to come together. But that has really been a rewarding experience for me, to be able to push a product that we know we're exclusive on, and that we can really help people.
That's great. Well, finding ways to now address this message and making sure that the industry knows more about it. Well, that's maybe this podcast can help us,
Yeah.
spread the word a little bit. So, and in our first conversation, I think a couple weeks ago when we met, you shared a few thoughts about your leadership style, how you're leading things at Drylet. And one thing that caught my attention was that you mentioned the importance of being both proactive, but also proactive and reactive as a leader, right? Different situations require you to have different posture. Can you share us a little bit more about this, and also give us an example? How do you keep balance on these approaches, making sure you're being proactive and reactive in the right time?
Yeah. And I think being in a small company, it requires obviously everybody to wear different hats, right? So from the proactive side, it's trying to have forethought on, making sure we're managing inventory, making sure we're budgeting sales the way that they need to be budgeted. What are we expecting to come in the next few months? And then reactive, we're a small company, so it kind of gives us some advantage in that we can be quickly reactive. We don't have, the corporate structure, and there's benefits to the corporate structure. Don't get me wrong, but we don't have the red tape to cut through, and five levels of approval to go through. So, and that's new for me from being the one that is responsible for making that final call, right? So, a lot of that falls on my shoulders, to take ownership of it, and be responsible for the decision that does get made. We've had some stumbles here and there along the way, but for the most part, we've been really successful, and we're really on a good growth track. I think over the next couple of years with some of the partnerships that we've made, and I think that lends itself to the proactive side of, okay, what was happening in the previous 7 or 8 years of this company kind of had it stagnant, and a lot of that was pretty much every sale that happened was a touch point sale. And I saw that as a flawed approach, and I felt like we needed to go through distribution and a dealer network. And so that's been the method that I'm pushing us down. Um, and to this point, it's been successful, and I think we got the ball rolling down the hill quicker than it has been, in a long time.
That's great. Do you guys have distributors in specific regions? Do you have distributors nationally? How does that work?
Yeah, a little bit of both. Primarily in the Midwest is where most of our livestock business is right now, and
Yeah,
that's the vertical that really kind of requires the distribution and dealer network.
yeah,
So I mean, I can call on all the integrators, but I can't touch every contract grower. And there's a lot of contract growers that have 10, 20 barns, and those are good sales points for us. But it needs to go through somebody that already knows those people and has a relationship built with them. Because we're a small team. If I had a sales force of 15 or 20 people, we could do that a little differently. Um, but that's been the main thing. So we're in some national, but we're also doing some, you know, um, more local, regional farmer dealer type situations too.
okay, okay. And few bonuses questions here.
Sure.
Uh, in this line, you mentioned like that's the distribution is an option, mostly for the livestock industry right now. Does it compare to the natural gas and the other verticals you're starting to explore?
So on the other ones, I'll use some sales agents, or um, some consultants to do some sales for us and to just operate on a commission basis.
Mhm.
The natural gas one, I'll divert for just a second to kind of give you an update on where we're at on that. We have done trials in the past. We know that we can be successful at increasing gas production 15 to 30. I think as high as 33% was what we saw, which is huge, right? That's a major benefit. The downside is the way that the contracts are written through the low carbon fuel standard and through the EPA. It requires a change to the carbon intensity score, the CI score of those digesters when you add a product. So we are in the process and conversations with the EPA and California Air and Resources Board to try to get that adjusted. And then we're going to do some more commercial trials and really start to push on that space, because there's,
Okay.
not to get too far off topic here, but that space has really kind of been a gold rush. Everybody's building digesters as fast as they can and haven't really 100% gotten to the point of optimization yet. I think we're reaching that point now, so folks are starting to look for tools and opportunities on how they can really get the most out of those systems.
Justin, how has your experience working in different regions of the United States influenced your approach to managing a national team and expanding to all these new markets?
Yeah, I mean there are certainly regional differences in what we do in really across all the verticals. If you look at the natural gas space, some are covered lagoons, some are vessel digesters. You look at the livestock space, predominantly and almost exclusively deep pit barns in the Midwest and down in the Southeast where I'm at, North Carolina, shallow pits and lagoon systems. So it just takes, I guess, some education to make sure that we as a team understand the differences, the different approaches, and how the product needs to be used. How do we talk to different potential customers and clientele, and then guiding them through the process to be successful. And we're using a live bacteria product too, so climate comes into play. There's not a whole lot of sense in putting a live bacteria or putting a bacteria product into a frozen lagoon. So we got to be aware of kind of where that line of delineation is on where things freeze and where they don't. Because we want to be successful, but we want our customers to be successful, and we want to be happy with the product that we put out there. So it's just kind of a team approach that I don't like the adage that the customer is always right. Sometimes sometimes they can be wrong, but we do want our customers to be happy, and so that's kind of the approach that we take to make sure that we are understanding the situation to the fullest, and then being able to respond to that.
Justin, and looking back at your background, as you mentioned, switching from different positions and experiences, if you had to give a piece of advice to people entering the industry, students that are completing their studies, and which sort or which piece of advice would you give to someone about willing to move, adapt, face new opportunities, try new things?
Yeah, and that was a lesson learned through experience myself. I graduated with a master's degree in 2011, and the job market was in North Carolina was still not great at that point, and ended up working on a sow farm and did it for 6 months. And I got to a point where I was standing there scraping behind a sow one morning, thinking, "Man, I went to school for a long time to be doing this. There's got to be something else." And so I opened opportunities on where I was willing to move at that point. And I'm, nothing against working on a sow farm. I'm very glad that I did it. It was a great experience. I learned a lot. It just wasn't what I wanted to do forever, right? So at that point, I was willing to move, and I found an opportunity in Illinois. Moved out there for around a year, and then had an opportunity to come back home. So you just gotta. A big piece of advice, I think, to students and young professionals is, be willing to take a risk. And I understand, the economy where we're at right now, it's expensive to move. My wife and I just moved back to North Carolina from Minnesota. We were out there for 5.5 years. And it's expensive to move. But I think from a career standpoint, you really open up a lot of doors for yourself when you're willing to, again, to adapt and to be willing to relocate, even if it's for a short period of time.
It's interesting the the role of timing in this as well, because as you mentioned, you were in North Carolina. It didn't make sense at that time, thinking about your career growth and new opportunities. You moved, and now you're back to North Carolina. But the timing is totally different. Now it makes sense. Now things are different.
Yep.
The opportunities come at the right time. Well, they come when they come. You need to make them happen as a the right time.
Either be willing to move or be willing to travel. Because that's where I'm at now, right? It doesn't really matter where I live. I get on an airplane and go to where I need to go. So that's an opportunity too. Don't confine yourself to just one area. I never really saw myself being a salesperson, but it's worked out well, and yeah, I'm glad that I've taken the steps that I've gone. But it's taking risk, being willing to try something different, try something new. I think there was a long time in this industry where guys started sweeping the floor and ended up running the company, and I don't think that's where we're at as an industry anymore. If you walk through any swine industry or any ag industry trade show, you see people that change shirts from one expo to the next, and people bounce around and change jobs, and I think as employers, you don't want to lose good people, right? But you don't want to hold anybody back either. Somebody finds a good opportunity, hey, appreciate the time you were here, and wish you the best of luck. And I think that's a change in mindset that the industry just needs to embrace a little more, I think.
My final question, well, actually, I have a couple more, but to wrap up our business conversation here, what were some unique challenges that you faced and leading a small team at Drylet? Not only challenges, but unique challenges and new opportunities. And how do you ensure that your team is motivated? You guys are a small team. You need everyone to be aligned and working together, and with a good pace. How do you work with all of that?
Yeah, I mean, I think for the first year or so, I was really just trying to make sure we held on to what we had, right? Just trying to get my arms around my new responsibilities, the team's new responsibilities. We all kind of changed job titles, and things were, a little bit chaotic there for that first year. I think we're in a much better place now. Everybody has kind of settled into a groove. We know what our responsibilities are, and how to get things done. As far as motivation standpoint, I mean, we have a team call every Monday morning. I'm not a big fan of mandatory meetings, team calls after team calls just to talk about the next meeting kind of thing. But I think that Monday meeting kind of gets us all on the same page, lets us know, who's doing what, what'd you do last week, what you plan for this week kind of thing. And then we try to get together. We don't do a lot of team building stuff right now. I think as a small company that gets a little tougher to do, but we go to different job sites and apply product, and try to go to dinner together, and make sure that we're maintaining and building good relationships with each other, good working relationships. And as a small team, and because we need to wear multiple hats, I try to give them more opportunities to expand their horizons too, right? So okay, you've never done sales before, you think you can make some sales calls, I'll help you through it. We can talk on it, and see what the opportunities are, and then that might open the door for sales commission for them at some point in the future. So hey, let's take an opportunity to grow your resume, expand your skill set, and I think that really helps, because I don't want anybody to get, and really we can't get pigeonholed into, oh, this is my only task. So yeah, I think that really helps to kind of keep folks motivated and giving them more opportunity.
Absolutely, a little bit of change, experiments, and movement.
You don't have to leave the company to change jobs. You can change jobs within the company. And yeah, we can give you something else to do. That's not a problem.
We had this saying here at Wisenetix that first we bring the right people to the bus, and then we they find their seats. First, you need to understand who fits in terms of culture and not exactly motivation, but the people who have the will to do something to help the company. If you see they are a good fit, then bring them to the bus, and then we'll see where they will sit.
Yep, exactly. We just recently hired a new employee. We kind of expanded into a new area. We're doing sonar mapping of lagoons now to monitor sludge levels. So I hired a guy to do that, and he'd never done sales before, but he's already making sales calls and has already sold some products. So it's fun to see somebody, get into a new opportunity and really kind of grow with the company, but grow themselves too, which is super important.
Yeah. Well, I'm in my first sales position here at Wisenetix, so it's the first time I was experimenting something like that, and gotta say, it's been a good experience so far. Justin, for us to wrap up, do you have any recommendations of books, movies, documentaries, podcasts, anything that you like, and maybe that have helped you, leverage this new position as the CEO?
Yeah, I'm not a huge reader. I do have a book here that I've been reading, Farmers versus Foodies. It was written by Ray Starling, who was a agriculture consultant during the Trump administration. Just kind of some of his antics and stories and things that he learned through being a consultant at that level. North Carolina guy. So I think that is good. It kind of gives you a different perspective on the political side of things, but also even at that level, people are just people, right? And relationships are important. And I think that as a CEO and certainly as a salesperson, we're just talking to people, and you can't get lost in the fact of this is somebody I'm trying to sell something to. This is a potential customer. Like, well, they're still people, and they have families and friends and hobbies and career aspirations of their own. And once you start to talk to people about some of that stuff, the sales part comes a lot easier, right? Um, so yeah, I listen to Joe Rogan podcast and that kind of stuff too, but it's not really super helpful for looking.
If you have a good time listening, it's good for your mind, right?
You spend enough time on an airplane and looking through a windshield, you got to find something to keep your mind occupied.
That's great. Justin, well, last question is for listeners that are listening to us, maybe they were interested in Drylet solutions and our whole talk, where people can connect.
Yeah, our two biggest social media platforms that we use would be LinkedIn and Facebook. So we try to post regular updates there, what we got going on. And yeah, we're at most of the industry trade shows that we can be. You could be at a trade show every other day if you wanted to be. So we try to be strategic about where we go. But yeah, LinkedIn and Facebook and our website is just Drylet.com.
If anyone wants to find him on LinkedIn and on Facebook, as well as Drylet. And for you that have been listening to us, and well, hope you enjoyed this episode, and I hope to see you in our next episode. Justin, thank you so much for taking the time.
Absolutely. Thank you.